thank you all for coming. Marsha, thank you so much for doing this. You and I have had a lot of private conversations, so for the sake of the audience, let's pretend we don't know each other. And start on the level of, so who is Marsha Wulff? So who are you? Tell us about yourself.
That's not what I like to do. I like to talk about other people.
But,
I guess because I was raised internationally, I just sort of don't see the walls. And so that gives me opportunities to gain perspective on how to invest differently. And that's made all the difference, is mindset. Because as a San Francisco trained investor, brokerage firm, dealer thing, I learned portfolio management, securities, taking things public, bonds, rolling those out, portfolio management, all of those elements. But my curiosity made me want to support innovations, and creating those networks for innovative ventures. I was doing it simultaneously in the U.S. and mostly Silicon Valley, and in Africa, mostly living through the diaspora who I've met coming through as international students in the United States. And then we became friends, and then I followed them home to learn what they were seeing, the opportunities for investing in innovation-based opportunities. And I was able to compare these as a private investor and say, look, why is it, and so I had one of our investor meetings, I was talking with a risk analyst. He's actually a founder of a risk evaluation, so how much risk does each investment have? And in the private sector, it's a lot harder to assess. And so I told him, why is it that when I look at biotech companies in San Francisco that have, why is it that when they have a burn rate that is 10 times the equivalent of a South African biotech company run by somebody who's equally qualified and has even larger, market opportunities, why is it that I have to pay 10 times as much valuation? When I buy in, my shares are valued at a higher valuation, which means I have a smaller percent of when I buy into Silicon Valley opportunity than I have when I buy into a South African opportunity, even though their medical schools were the first ones to succeed at heart transplants, etc. Why is it that, and he says, well, yeah, 10x, that's about right for the risk premium. And I'm thinking, the risk premium should not be any greater than 3x. So when you've got insights because of your personal relationships, you understand that risk premium is not accurate. Then you say, I need to invest more in South African innovations, right?
Right. So that's interesting that your doubling down was because you figured that the risk premium was wrongly priced.
Exactly.
And so you figured that you would make more returns that way. But how did you correlate that with the risk perception? Right. Because the reality also is that you're in Silicon Valley, and most people in Silicon Valley don't invest even in New York. To invest in New York is a big deal, right? So how did you sort of convince yourself to look, into Africa, given that you were not always there?
Yeah, okay, so I'm not always there, but I had already worked in Africa on behalf of the U.S. corporation that did a joint venture in South Africa. And while I was there, I learned the whole ecosystem that was supporting African innovations. You know, not only visiting the engineering schools and the medical schools and the intellectual property attorneys, but also the venture capitalists and all the local investors. And so you start realizing, well, this isn't that different from back home. But I do understand that South Africa is so totally different from the other. But so I chose, because Zuma became president, basically, I chose to focus on where my friends that I knew from the U.S., from Africa that I met in the U.S., I chose to build, first we shared projects, you know, like, okay, so we've got this we see this pharmaceutical opportunity, how are you addressing that, and how am I addressing that, and so we just helped each other with projects.
Right.
So by the time it got to investing, I had firm relationships. I'd been to the weddings, I'd been to the baby naming ceremonies. We were strong friends. I was their American mom.
Wow.
And the reason why those entrepreneurs were going to our, America's top schools was because they had a passion to solve a problem back home, and usually it's because of their love of their mother or their sister or somebody that they held dear, and they were not going to give up until they succeeded at solving that problem. And I thought, man, this is a deal made in heaven. They're not. You can't find better entrepreneurs here.
Right. Now, so that's great. So, how did you transition those informal networks, right, into starting Lofty Inc., which is the firm that you started, your partners. How did that transition happen?
Yeah, it took 20 years for me to not only find the team I wanted to work with on an investment fund, but also for them to finish all of their schooling and elevate their projects into being ready to do venture capital. So what happened was Silicon Valley has an African diaspora network, as do other major areas, Atlanta and so forth, New York City, and those people are global experts in whatever it is they're focused on. And so I was involved in helping them with investment symposiums. And so I was looking for speakers, and I wake up one morning and there's that Mark Zuckerberg walking the streets of Lagos and sitting there with kids on computers, and he's saying, "These are my people." And I realized, okay, now we're ready. We can get some jobs done. We can get the job done. So I reach out to my favorite team that I've been working with for 9 years on projects as they were getting their masters from Oxford and whatever. And I said, look, can you help me tell me how this happened so that I can end up with a good speaker for this, diaspora group? And they said, well, we invested in that through our angel network. Okay.
So there were angel networks already there.
Yeah. So they had already, this was one of their portfolio companies through their angel network. So what happened was the whole ecosystem of Africa was being built by diaspora that were going back and forth. And they were finding entrepreneurs, they were training entrepreneurs, they were, with their tech hubs, they were organizing angel networks to share the job of vetting, deal making, mentoring, and then now they had successes, and that was Andela. Andela, everybody knew that was going to become a unicorn, but before that, one of the Nigerian founders left and founded Flutterwave. Right. Which I wanted into as an investor, very selfishly.
Right.
And so I said, let's start a venture capital fund so that I can invest in your guy.
Wow.
They said, oh, okay. So that was, and of course Flutterwave became a unicorn, $1 billion company before Andela even. Right. So meanwhile, okay, so now there are 9 unicorn billion-dollar companies that are African, and we've invested in 4 of them.
Wow.
So, you know, it shouldn't be that hard to find investors to co-invest with us, right?
Right.
But
Yeah.
you can't believe how hard it's been. Until very recently, all of our investors were African professionals who either go back and forth and knew what was going on and knew the opportunities, or people who had actually moved back and were there full time. And they were part of this angel network. And I can tell you, when I sat down and looked at all of the investors in our 2022, when we were able to invest in like 60 ventures with
Right.
that fund, and I looked at the list of LPs, and they were all African names except for like that many, and I just cried. I thought, you know, this is so amazing how Africans are building their own self-sustaining ecosystem, and that's what this book is about.
Right. So I'm going to go to the book, but I want to do one more question about the So you invested in 4 unicorns out of the 9 that have been created. So tell us a little bit about how you sort of did these deals, why you chose those companies, and if you may, some of the return profile. You don't have to be specific, but just to give people a sense of how this is working compared to the U.S. investment that you've made.
Well, I'd really like to compare it to what, well, okay, so you'll see. Like,
Yeah.
So in the book I tell the story about how 𝗔𝗳𝗶𝗰𝗵,
Yeah.
the founder of, a co-founder of both 𝗓𝗃𝗏 and 𝗓𝗏 that are both unicorns. He was like 19 years old and going through a business entrepreneurship program in a Canadian university. Where BlackBerry was innovated, and he started a venture, and so he went to Lagos to get some backing from Idris, one of my buddies, and Idris had this angel network that he was putting together, and so Idris's angels invested for a edutech that he was founding, and he went back and worked on it, and then came back and said, you know, this isn't going to work. It's not scalable enough. It's not a sound strategy. I'm sorry. I feel really bad that I took your money, and it's not going to work. And so the investors, instead of getting mad or saying, well, you owe me, they said, no worries. We still believe in you as an entrepreneur, and we believe in your mission to create jobs and for African youth. So bring us your next deal. Now this is critical.
Right.
And within months, he came back with Andela's team, which was so much more robust, and they invested again. But he would not go forward with Andela. Is what it was. He would not go forward with the Andela team unless Andela accepted this deal, so that the African investors who had lost money in his prior deal would have that value rolled over into shares of Andela, and that way, if Andela worked, then those investors, E's investors, would receive that back. That's the kind of founding pioneers of Africa's investment ecosystem that builds the trust that goes through all the tough times together, and that's what happens. So, because so 𝗓𝗏, yeah, there you go.
Right. So now I think we've got 5 more minutes, and I'm going to open it up. No, I'm sure a lot of you have questions, and I'm going to go to the book. So I came to visit you in Kamel, where you live down south, and I remember you telling me about I'm retiring. I said, no, you can't retire. We just started. But I'm old. I got grandkids, and I have to move on. And then you told me this idea of writing a book, and here we are. And I got the first autographed copy of the book, by the way. This is mine. So how did you sort of get writing this book? What did you try to achieve with the book?
Okay, so in 1970, I started working with international students, and back then, Nigerians did not go back; they stayed. Now they go back. This is the vision that I've had is that long, and so I knew that these international students were remarkable people, and I saw the Asians among them going back, and the Asian diaspora lifted over 1 billion people, 1 billion Asians out of extreme poverty by managing the commerce through their hands. It went through their hands.
Right.
And I knew that was going to happen to Africa and Africans.
Right.
Once the diaspora started going back, and that happened in 2008.
From
That's
1970.
when it started.
Wow.
Yeah, that's when that started happening. So then I knew there was, this book. So this book, it represents that whole spectrum of people who have a passion for excellence, to leave their countries, gain that capacity, and then go back and build it out back home. That is a world-class story for any country, and that's what's been happening in Africa. So I wrote this book for American investors to understand why they should trust Africa's self-sustaining ecosystem now.
That deserves a round of applause. And with that, I will turn it out to the floor. Who's going to ask the first question?
George, I'm sorry, go ahead.
George, yeah, you had a question.
I was just going to say, George asked some questions that got me started earlier, but go ahead, sir. What was yours? I think yours was the first hand up.
Yeah.
Aaron?
Just curious, do you think, what's the role that technology can play?
Please, can you introduce yourself so we know who you are?
Oh, sure. Paul Williams, I'm with the University of California. Just curious, what role, actually I'll ask you a question. What role can technology play in building the bridges and building the trust that you just referred to? And then is there a particular role that you see that higher ed institutions like UC can play in making these connections?
What about higher ed?
What higher
higher
educational institutions can play? So what role does technology play? And what role can higher educational institutions like the UC system or UC Berkeley, etc.?
Well, that's what this whole story is about, is those two factors right there. Technology is the great leveler for women who might not have the muscle power or the ability to go to an office every day. They can still be outstanding world-class entrepreneurs building global corporations. But the diaspora, I call Argonauts because they go back and forth. They make a circle. It's circular migration. They leave for higher education. They bring it back home. They establish new universities like Ashese University in Ghana. Is world class. And that's because of they're bringing it's the what do you call it, borderless knowledge and tech is the basis of all of this transformation from frontier markets to emerging markets.
Do you think, I want to tag on the Paul's question, do you think institutions like UC systems should start building educational institutions on the continent, like Ashese did? Would that be an extension? Sorry, Paul, I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but
absolutely.
that makes sense.
You could do that, or you can do what I did, and that's not try to rebuild the wheel. Just help people like Patrick build their own universities, because that builds the self-sufficiency.
Right.
And they will do it. They're able to pull in and change political will. He's got the president of Ghana in his hand, saying, when I came here to speak at your commencement exercise, I finally figured out why you want a new road, because it was so bumpy. So they got the new road, right? And that's not something UC would be able to, you know what I mean? So partnering, we each have something we can help the other with. That's what diverse partnerships, that's where our strength lies, right? I don't know how to micromanage a venture in Lagos, but my partners do.
Right.
Great, thank you.
Any more questions? Yeah.
So,
Introduce yourself, please.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just a new founder of Clutch AI. So my question is regarding the going back aspect. As a global company, do you think that a global company that serves Africa as well as the globe should have to go back, or can you continue being based in SF and serve Africa, but with the way things are going, to be a global company?
Flutterwave's headquarters is here.
Okay,
Does that answer your question?
I think so. Thanks.
There you go. I think it's more where your heart lives,
Okay.
what your motives are. That's what matters. And by the way, all of you with blue tags, you don't have to spend a minute of speed dating with me. Just go to the website and send your deck. That's it. The system is all set up for you. Open door. We've got the screening process. The analysts that are right there waiting for you. And the first thing they do is say, okay, this one goes to the angel networks, and this one goes to the VC funds for deeper due diligence. Okay?
One more question, Tyler, or we're done?
Oh, we got 8 minutes.
Okay, we got 8 minutes. 8 minutes. Okay.
Back
we
here,
can-
back
yeah,
here.
it's
A
okay.
question.
George.
Oh, at the back over there. All right, there you go.
Tyler.
My question is, what role do you think, and how important is it for governments to enable the ecosystem on a regulatory side of things?
Okay,
Government's
I'm
role.
going to stand because some of you
I'll stand
can't
with
see
you.
very well. Thank you so much. Yeah, don't wait for the government.
Don't
Help-
wait for the government.
Help the government. So in Nigeria, we had the example of SARS, right, guys?
Yes.
Who remembers SARS?
SARS.
Okay, just a couple. So what we had was the old school security forces of a city that was manned by people who were tired of being held down, and that security force was envious of young technology people who were able to come here and come to school and carry a laptop. So they started harassing any Lagosian.
Yeah.
Michael! sorry, dear. I didn't know you were here. You can tell me, correct whatever I say about SARS, okay? But they were harassing everybody from 𝗓𝗶𝗶𝗰, the founder of two unicorns, it was just harassment, and it needed to be changed, and the government kept promising they would, but it wasn't until they reached a critical mass, a tipping point of diaspora who knew and loved technology and its opportunity to change their country, that the protest said, look, enough, we've had enough, and we're going to have a peaceful protest, and you're going to listen to us, and we're going to stay here until you change your policies and you stop harassing us. So I personally, out of our first portfolio of 5 entrepreneurs, at least 2 of them were jailed and roughed up and detained, including 𝗓𝗶𝗶𝗃, as well as 𝗓𝗶𝘃𝗃𝗃 of the health. Yeah, it's like a 𝗂𝗶𝗃𝗃 miniature for Nigeria. That's now expanded into Egypt and Ghana and Senegal. Anyway, these were wonderful people who were being detained by a government force. There were diaspora returnees who were the mouth, the voice of this group, and they were able to speak clearly to the political powers, not only within Nigeria but globally. New York Times didn't get it right, but the point is that the government now has changed, and some of those detainees, like 𝗓𝗶𝗶𝗃𝗃, he has now been appointed to advise the government. This week, this is the news.
Wow.
The government has appointed him and 4 other probable leaders of the SARS protests to advise the government on how to move forward. But in the meantime, this protest did not stop until the government promised to build an act that would free the tech entrepreneurs from the harassment. And that act not only was signed in Nigeria, it was signed in Ghana and a whole bunch of 14 other countries, right? I mean,
The Startup Act, yeah.
You guys fill this in, right? Very exciting. So be the change you want to see. Don't wait for policies and procedures and governance, because governments follow, they don't lead. And in the book, I pull in American entrepreneurs and innovators like Ford. Henry Ford did not wait until there were roads and gas stations to create the Model T. You don't do that. That comes after. But the Model T was what freed Americans from being 96% agrarian, rural, farmers, poor, dirt poor, to being 96% urban, employed formally, etc., industrialized. And it was that car that made the difference, because that car got the produce to market. And it also got the people into the urban cities, and they could go back and forth. So that's the kind of change that your innovations, your investments in innovators in Africa, that's what can change a continent.
By the way, so all that is in this book. On the registration page, there's a link there. You can order it on Amazon if you want a copy. I am in the book. So.
Well, don't worry.
She was kind of right over me.
Eric was one of the first pioneers that advised one of the first founders of the first tech hub on the continent. Well, except for South Africa.
Anyway, and also feel free to tweet hashtag as #SFTechWeek, 𝗔𝗳𝗿𝗶𝗰, and Angel for Africa. Next question. There was another question over there?
One more question.
Over here.
Hi, Dr. McIntosh, founder of 𝗂𝗂𝗃 Conference. You mentioned that you think innovation is a great equalizer, and I agree.
Technology.
Technology. Are you excited with all the talk about AI? Do you see that supercharging the innovation and advancements in Africa?
So I used a lot of AI research to find out what the broader understanding of African investing was in the marketplace. And what I learned was that, I learned from AI itself. I was saying, why is it that your summary is different from the information that's in your sources? And they said, well, that's because I couldn't open those sources that you're talking about because it was a video. And I would have had to put in some sort of a YouTube email or something, and I'm not allowed to review any source information. So I was just working off of the title, and that title indicated that this individual who I knew had was a good guy, that he was corrupt, and so that's why I pushed back and challenged AI on that point. And I mean, this is a guy who was orphaned in Kenya, raised by his grandmother, and he somehow was such a good scholar as a young man that he got into Stanford. I was invited by him to speak at Stanford's very first Africa Business Forum that he launched, and he founded out of his pocket for us to come and have that. And that's been one of the main ways that we've met each other, the entrepreneurs of Africa and the investors of the U.S. And he was put in charge of ChemSet to turn it around after USAID screwed it all up, so that the USAID supply chain had ruined it. And that's in the book too. So, anyway, don't get me started on that.
Good timing. That's great timing.